Okay.
Wow, wow.
Wowie, wowie.
Good tunes, good times.
Okay, so the movie was Perfect Blue, and the plot is basically like a crime. It's a crime, and it's kind of like a whodunit, and there's some psychological elements in there.
I mean, so it's about a pop idol who is changing her. She's been part of a girl group for 2.5 years, and then she wants to break into acting, and so it's about her unfamiliarity with this. It's about people who want her to remain an idol. She's being stalked. She's starting to have weird visions, weird dreams, and she's having this sort of like psychosis of and crossroads of what she's acting in the show, what she's experiencing in real life, her stalker. Yeah, I mean, what did you think about it?
Well, I got to say, first of all, I got to give props where props are due. First of all, I thought this was made in like the early 90s. It's not, but it pays homage to like early 90s anime, and I thought it did a good job because I was convinced it was like straight out of the 90s.
Oh, you know what? It is. It was 97.
Oh, is it?
It said 2018. I wonder if they like did a remaster or
something. What year was it?
97.
Okay, well then never mind. So my point was clear. It's a 97 movie. And the soundtrack was very good. The soundtrack is great. I mean, honestly, probably one of the better soundtracks of any like movie. But I'll say it's not like it's got like psychological horror elements, but it's not. I wouldn't call this a straight up horror flick. It's more of a thriller. But yeah, like Aaron said, just like the movie goes and dives deeper, and it becomes more confusing for the viewer. We don't really understand what's real and what's not real. Like, is there a real stalker? Is there some spiritual element with like possession? But then it kind of plays into this TV series that she's acting for. Yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was great. I thought there were parts of it that were unnecessary, but that's just me. There was some grotesque nudity that I felt like was way overdone. But it's not really like it's not a unique plot by any means, but I feel like it just does it well. It kept me engaged, and yeah, I don't know. I liked it. What'd you think?
I mean, see, I thought it was pretty unique. I mean, I don't know of many movies that are like this, especially in the 90s.
I guess maybe like anime. I feel like the plot of, like it's someone from your own team is not overdone, but it's a plot line I think we might have seen before. Maybe not a lot before the 90s, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, see, I don't know, because I think that's you could find yourself being a little too reductive if you do that.
Yeah.
Like I mean, plot. Like I think the plot is more than just the twist.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think, right off the bat, I'll say that this is far and away probably the best movie we've seen.
Yeah.
So far,
Yeah.
I really like this. I've had this on my watch list for a while, and like a bunch of stuff that probably you put in your watch list too is. I didn't really know anything about this movie. I knew it got good reviews. I knew that it had a unique art style in that it's an animated movie. It's not. It's like all the horror movies that we've seen have been live action. I thought the animation for this says 99. Letterboxd says 97, but I mean like. For 97 or 99 even, let's even be more conservative. I thought it looked great. It looked great. Yeah. Obviously, like you can tell where they had shortcuts through the animation process. You can see that there were like scenes where they had a big crowd and they were mostly faceless. I mean, maybe that was an artistic choice. Maybe that's to create more of this sort of like sinister vibe of the people that Mima is seeing in the audience. I really liked it a lot. I thought it was really good. I thought it was, like you said, the soundtrack I thought was really good. This is okay. So one thing I will say is that this is a movie that, like, a lot of my criticisms for a lot of movies that we've seen so far is like, look, pick something that you want to focus on. Mm-hmm. Don't spread yourself too thin and throw a million things out there and try to do them all. Try to do one thing really well. And I think this movie does one thing really, really well. Its themes, its motivations are like, they could have done what they were doing and then been like, I don't know, there's also ghosts in here. And they could have been like, maybe there's this in there too. Like, they picked something that I thought was interesting, stuck with it, and really pushed it, as opposed to lacking conviction and trying lots of other things on top of it because you just weren't sure.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think it does a good job of, like, now retrospectively going back, it's confusing to watch throughout, like, what is happening, but like at the end, the ending gives you a resolve, and it gives those scenes purpose that was confusing before. I think a movie from this era doing a psychological thriller like this, I think with it being animated, you have less bounds to reality, but it could have been done in reality. There wasn't anything that was too egregiously, like, weird or crazy. It was very believable. It was very, like, thrilling throughout. There were elements of horror tied in there, mostly like psychological horror, and specifically the gore that was in there. I mean, it's cartoon gore. I feel like it served a purpose. It wasn't too, like, overly gross, brutal maybe in some scenes, but I think they want you to feel very, I don't know, they want you to feel moved by how violent these crimes were and how serious Mima's life was at stake, or wasn't at stake, depending on the circumstances.
I think that this movie is really served by the medium they chose for it. Like, using an animation style, I think really elevates this movie a lot. Because, like, throughout the movie, Mima is confronted with her idol, like the idol variation of her, who is dressed up. She's wearing like a low cut skirt, and she's got her hair done up, and is following her in a way that is menacing, but is, like, contrasted against this, like, well, but look, she's a pop idol. And I think that, and even as she's pursuing that version of herself through the hallways, that other version is sort of like gallantly kind of like just strolling and like effortlessly and gracefully just sort of like going through the hallways. And I think that if that was attempted in like a live action setting, I think it would have hurt it. I think it would have looked silly. I think it wouldn't have looked convincing, as odd as that is, because obviously this is an animated thing. It's not convincing just on that merit alone. But I think that by choosing that, they could, I think you had mentioned this, like they could take more liberties. They could do things that were a little out of the natural world, and it feel like it was making sense. It felt like it played into it, and I thought it elevated the movie.
Yeah, I think also those moments where you see that the kind of a pop idol Mima taunt actress Mima, we'll just use those terms. Like, I feel like some of those might have been actual psychotic breaks. Maybe. I mean, that's kind of what you think throughout. You're like, is she imagining this? Is it a dream? And I kind of made the allusion to, it kind of reminds me of like Sunshine, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Just like, it kind of goes back and forth. And once you watch the movie and pay close attention, you kind of know what's the real and what's the fake, or what's the memories that are gone. But yeah, I feel like it's also like, that's a big theme, is like losing yourself. Like, is she really going mad? Is she really, needs to be her whole old pop idol self, or does she want to be this actress? Like, she was having a war with herself. So I think it's part of like the psychological element of an internal battle, but also there is an external component, and one that frames her in killing a couple people from there that are important to her life. And I think we kind of thought like maybe it was her. There was like,
I mean, for a period of time, you definitely do,
because they talk about like possession, like could you possess an illusion to commit these crimes, and that's kind of what you're left thinking is, well, maybe did she do it? Because she finds the bloody clothes in her closet.
Yeah.
And her room changes all the time, and it's very unsettling. Like, I'm not even in the right room, So.
Yeah, I mean, like, at least to me, I mean, I don't know if your interpretation was different. I think so. This is one of those movies that I think allows for different interpretations, which I really like. I like a movie that allows for people to kind of put their own swing and perspective on it. But for me, though, I felt like it was unimpeachable that the person who performed those murders was Rumi, was her agent, who at the beginning was pretty displeased with the push to put her into this actress role. I think that one of the other agents was really pushing for that, and she had a lot of like hesitation to it. But at multiple different parts of this movie, you thought, okay, well, it must be somebody we've not met yet. Yeah. And then they show you that the creepy guy from the very beginning had been starting this web page as if portraying himself as if he himself is Mima. And then you are like, okay, well, it's definitely this guy. Yeah. I mean, like, this guy is like,
he looks the part.
Yeah, and he's like following people. He is like, he is like, he has his room decorated in a way that is like showing extreme like parasocial behavior,
obsession.
Yeah, and then eventually you start resigning yourself to thinking, okay, well, I guess it was Mima, because she's finding, she's losing track of reality. She's losing her sense of time. She's finding bloody clothes inside of her closet. And eventually you find out it's Rumi. But I thought it was, for me, I feel like it's difficult to pull something like that off. Like, again, I think another movie would have lacked some conviction and said, you know what, I'm not confident in this idea in and of itself. Let's broaden it. And I think that really weakens a movie like that. And I thought that by really sticking with this all the way through, I thought it really elevated what they were trying to do. And I thought that it was a much more effective movie than trying to water it down with lots of other ideas, lots of other concepts, lots of other things going on.
Yeah. I think it took a good focus, and it doesn't take too many like turns in a plot way, but it uses the plot that it's in, like the movie scenes, to like almost create more confusion. It creates more like a sense of dread, paranoia, maybe worry, anxiety for like a viewer, because again, you kind of get mixed up with almost becomes like a meta horror where, like you can't really, point. And then at the end, I feel like you get a good twist and you get resolution. Like it almost feels like a safe movie, but I feel like in the 90s, this would have been a little bit different than what you normally see. Although, at least in animation, and again, this is a Japanese movie, so I don't know if those kind of movies were prominent, during that era. I don't know, but there were psychological thrillers here, and I'm trying to think of ones that might have been in America, but even still, there's not like good psychological animations, right? I mean, that was kind of a unique experience for me, because I've not seen a animation that really strives for like a horror theme or a psychological thriller. I mean, have you ever seen a psychological thriller animation?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly could be. Like, I think that it is, to your point, I think it's kind of more of a niche genre. Like, I think that it was an ambitious idea to do a movie like this. Because I mean, I think even today, like, when you think of animation, you think of
Yeah.
that's a kid thing,
Yeah,
right?
kids movies,
To the point where I've seen a lot of like even just recently I watched Princess Mononoke, and there's like it is like almost jarring to see adult themes in an animated movie. Like it is still, I think, hard to see animated movies as having the capability of telling stories like this. But I think that it can be done really, really well. Obviously, it can be done really, really poorly if you don't execute it well. But like I just quickly looked it up. The budget for this movie in U.S. dollars was $830,000, and it's like that doesn't seem like a whole lot of money to do a movie like this, especially like I mean, speaking about the animation, I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I think it really kind of reminds you of like early anime from that era. Like it reminds you of like early Dragon Ball Z. I mean, I think it's all, but I'm pretty sure most of it's hand drawn.
It looks absolutely hand drawn. Yeah,
especially with like 180 or 800,000. Yeah, but as a budget, to me that seems like low considering it was all hand done. When you have movies now that utilize computers to.
Yeah, and maybe they had some help from that, but I still think that it does. Yeah. It seems to do a pretty good job of. Yeah. It has the signs to me that it was hand drawn, just based off of some of the shortcuts that they had taken, which are totally fine. I think that there's nothing wrong with them, but it's the kind of things you'd expect to see in a movie that was like, I don't know, you're looking at like old Disney movies, and you're like, oh, here are the tricks that they would do to show depth and things like that.
Yeah.
I gotta say, like, I always get happy when I see an extremely faithful animation of technical things. Like seeing that Macintosh that detailed and drawing the operating system was like that is impressive. Because I mean, of course, at that point, the actual OS is not particularly relevant because eventually she gets in a browser and you're just looking at a web page. But it's pretty funny to see like such a faithful depiction of classic Mac OS in a movie like this.
To me, I wonder if do you think that's like do you think those are like semi ad placements? Do you think they're actually
maybe? I mean, maybe.
Yeah, because we saw there was like it said it was going backwards. It said USA Locker Foot, so Foot Locker USA. I mean, could you make that argument that maybe? I mean, maybe, but like I can appreciate like those details too, especially since like it's so recognizable even now. Like to go back and I mean, you called it off the bat. Even looking at like the monitor, you were like, "Oh, that, you know."
Yeah,
it's clearly
even down to the rainbow Apple logo, as opposed to what you would see today, which is like a solid color or like a lit up version, but.
Yeah, I think those details are important, especially now. I think.
I mean, as far as ad placement, I don't know. Like, I'd like to think at that time there were, especially in the era they're depicting. Which I mean, what did it seem like? Did it seem like it was like present day, as if it were 97? Did it seem like? I mean, it must have been.
Oh, yeah,
like,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, but it was definitely,
It must have been earlier. Like, not much earlier, but earlier.
Yeah.
Like, because...
I would say, like, 95, 94,
yeah, maybe even, like, early 90s, like, maybe 90, 91. Yeah. But, I mean, I would like to think that... Could it be ad placement? Sure, but I also think that there are... I also think that there are a lot of people who have a certain fondness for Macintosh that would appreciate that level of detail, even if it's, you know, in the way that like Steve Jobs has an appreciation for fine detail kind of thing that may be lost on most people. But I thought that was pretty cool to see that faithful of a depiction of technology, especially when they could just gloss over it and be like, I don't know, it's a cool OS. It's but it's a browser. I mean, down to like seeing the Splash logo for the Netscape Navigator. Yeah,
that's right.
That was really cool.
Yeah, that's true. And I think we're talking about like maybe lost in translation things, but things like the Mac OS stuff just seems to penetrate culture but it's funny. I wonder how much of this film, like some of the dialogue, would have been so much more meaningful if we had understood like original like Japanese. You know what I mean? I feel like some of you kind of laugh at the lyrics, like because when they're singing, the lyrics just sound. What was the line? There was one line.
Yeah, they just don't fit very well. Yeah, it was like I'm going to dress sensibly and wear denim or something like that. Like, it was something. Really...
it was very very funny to read.
Yeah,
but my point is like I'm sure it would be far more impactful if you were Japanese and understood like the language, because there are certain like colloquialisms that like. Yeah. That they say that we would say here in the U.S., but we just, we can't get it reading through captions. But
I mean, music is hard because, like, you would presume that at least in the phonetic language that they're speaking, it is rhyming and there's like a scheme and there's like a pattern. But it's obviously like that doesn't exist if you have to translate that into a language that doesn't share those same patterns, doesn't share that same like rhyming scheme or that kind of thing. I mean, definitely the cultural stuff. I'm sure there's plenty of cultural things like what was Japan like in early 90s, maybe even late 80s.
Yeah, they made it look. I mean, I like the way it was done. Like, I mean, there's just so many different like, vantage points. It wasn't like done in one angle. Like there were so many different like scenes, and again, you can do that with animation, but like it to be hand drawn. Like the scene that I remember, like you could tell like she's really depraved is when she's like, in her bathtub, like face down, face in the water, and then they get a cool shot of her face in the water. Right? You can't do that. I mean, I guess you could do that with like modern cameras, but just stuff like that was just so small, but I think the details in those were very catching to viewers.
Yeah, I mean, like it permits you a certain artistic license you just don't easily have. So it's like, I mean, you've probably seen this. I know that we both have talked about this in the past. It's like when you hear about a Legend of Zelda movie or TV show and you hear that it's going to be live action and you're like, how can you depict this whole thing in a live action setting? It feels like it's done so much more appropriately and more faithfully using an animation style, whether that be like, kind of the Studio Ghibli look or it's I think that this using animation like this permits you a whole different set of artistic tools that you just don't necessarily have at your disposal. And I think they leaned into it because we were talking about how they can, the things that they're depicting, that some of those things would be extremely silly in real life. Like, we're talking about this in Altered States. Like when he's just like running around as an ape, it's like, it feels goofy. And that's not to say that like, Altered States should have been an animated movie. But I think that some movies, the artistic choices that they're making can just not land, and they are not compatible with like the kind of thing that they're trying to tell you.
Yeah, I think especially when you like do a live action, like it grounds itself in too much into like reality, where like this is the life that we and you live, right? We live in this world, and you'd assume like any humanoid in real life, right, is just like on Earth, and it just feels very out of place. But here, I mean, I even in the setting of like an animation that's like, again, it's human, I guess, but I don't know, it just does everything really well. I thought it's more, I would call this more of like a psychological thriller, maybe psychological horror in the fact that it's got some gore elements, like if you want to call that like a horror type movie. But I really liked it. I thought, again, to reiterate, the soundtrack was great. The plot was like fun to watch. It was entertaining. I would watch this again. I'd watch it with other people. I think the one scene that I didn't like, and I think you're on the same way, but it's just like its artistic art style was like the nudity factor. I mean, it was very, just very obvious. Like usually, I feel like they try to like, but I don't know. They were just very, very upfront about it. But
yeah, you mean like lingering on it way too long.
Yeah, well, like the scene itself, almost is like, it makes you feel awkward, and I think that the point is to make you feel awkward, But then like when they do like a montage of like the photography pictures,
right.
it just goes again, and you're like, okay, we get, like, okay,
Yeah.
but again, this is coming from somebody who just, I don't want to have to see that,
Well, I mean,
in a movie.
yeah.
It didn't lend itself to a plot, but it could be a culture thing. It could be like maybe movies in the 90s, like animation movies in the 90s wanted it. I don't know what the reason behind it was, but.
Well, I mean, I mean, just because I think it is worth mentioning, if you are interested in seeing this movie, there is a rape scene.
Yes.
It's how do I want to say this? It's part of the show that they're shooting, but it is hard. It is still hard to watch, right? So it's like, think about an actress who is breaking into acting, and for Mima, she is told that this is the role that they're going to put her in, and she is pressured to say yes because she wants to start being an actress, and she knows that if she were to protest, that it would cause a lot of rewrites, which her agents had warned her against. Mm-hmm. And so she
kind of feels forced.
She jumps into this. It's hard to watch. It's like, this to me, I think, is like the kind of stuff that I have very little tolerance or patience for in a horror movie is harm to children, harm to innocent people like that. I think that is very hard to watch.
Yeah.
Even though in this movie it is explicitly told to you that it is fake, it is not real, but it's still difficult to watch.
Yeah.
But I think that the thing that I thought was interesting about this movie was that everyone who is obsessed with her as a pop icon is a bunch of men. Like, it's really interesting that you look at the crowd, it's all a bunch of men.
Yeah.
You look at the paparazzi, they're all men. You look at the people digesting this continuous news cycle about Mima, they're all men. Like, I think that they're obviously stating how much her dominantly male audience is driving her into these types of these types of traumas that she's experiencing.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I'd watch it again. Thought it was great. I do agree it was probably the best that we've seen.
Yeah, I think so.
Of all these.
Yeah, I mean, I would say far and away. I mean, probably one of the better horror movies I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
I would check it out. Like, I think that it's well told. It's interesting. Look, I get it if you don't like movies that you have subtitles for. I get that that's tricky. That's hard for some people to do. But I would encourage you to just do it, because I think that you would be missing out on a lot of movies if that's a deal breaker for you.
I agree.
So.
All right,
Leo,
can you
take us
out?
Take us out, buddy.
What do you mean take us out?
Take us out. Play us out.
Play us out. Play us out. What do you mean play us out? All right.
I can't read the prompter.
3, 2, 1.
Leo time.
Leo time.